Friends, today to enlighten us all, to inform us all, to make us aware of the techniques of adding local flavor to literary translation, we have with us Dr. T.S. Saravanan. He is the Deputy Director, Tamil Nadu Textbook and Educational Services Corporation, Chennai. Let's welcome him with a big round of applause. Welcome you, sir. We welcome you.
Welcome, madam. Welcome.
His love for the language and literature, be it the ancient Tirukural or the contemporary literature, have been exemplary and have inspired the students and scholars in the field. He is one of the driving forces behind the region-specific course on contemporary Tamil literature in translation at WCC. I should add a relevant event, that has taken place recently in Tamil Nadu. To promote Tamil literature and culture in English, Tamil Nadu Textbook and Educational Services Corporation has initiated a Tamil English literary translation program, wherein Dr. Saravanan played a vital role. We appreciate you for this, sir.
Thank you, sir.
We will learn a lot from you, sir. And my dear friends and participants will learn a lot from him on techniques of adding local flavor in literary translation. This topic fits in domestication, actually, one of the strategies of literary translation. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation.
Yes, sir.
Now, I would like to request you to enlighten us, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. First of all, I thank National Translation Mission, Women's Christian College, and of course, Mini Madam, who recommended me for this lecture. I would like to share some of my experiences related to how we can add local flavor into the literary translation. So, based on I am teaching Tamil literature to students who are preparing for All India Civil Service examination. So, in that way, I'm connected with both the classical literature and modern literature. And for the last couple of years, my association with Mini Madam, we discussed many things. How the translators are working to bring out the real flavor of the. Whenever a translated work is read, it should not be felt that it is a translated work. The reader has to feel that it is a original work. That the skill of the translator lies there. So if when a reader read a text, he feels that it is written in original language rather than a translation, then it will be appreciated, then it will be celebrated. That credit goes to the translator. So translation is equal to the creation. So Madam used to say that the royalty, whatever paid to the translator, whatever paid to the creator has to be equally has to be paid to the translator, because translator also a creator. So you know that different kind of translations are there. I would like to quote some examples, not only from the modern literature, from ancient period of Tamil literature, how the techniques have been adopted by our ancient Tamil literary scholars, Tamil literary poets, to adopt something from other language to Tamil, when to suit the Tamil culture. So, first of all, I'll start with my favorite book, Tirukural. So, Tirukural is celebrated for for many reasons. One of the important reason why Tirukural is celebrated is it is a secular literature. How a king can be a better king, how a minister can be a better minister. All these things are spoken in Tirukural. So Thiruvalluvar is a great saint. He has read lot and lot of literature, lot and lot of knowledge available at that period of time. So there are controversies about the period of Thiruvalluvar. According to some scholars, he belongs to 3rd century. According to some, he belongs to 5th century. According to most of the scholars, he belongs to the 1st century BC. So Tamil Nadu government has settled it by setting a committee under the chairmanship of Marimalai Adigal, great Tamil scholar, in 1970, when Dr. Kalaignar Karunanidhi was the chief minister. and they did some research, and they arrived at Tiruvallur might have lived in the first century BC and 31 BC. That is, you are following a calendar called Tiruvallur calendar. That he was born in 31 BC, and he lived in the first century AD, and Tirukural was written in the first century AD, because Tirukural is influenced by the tenets of Christianity, Buddhism, and Jainism. The first century AD, all these religions, tenets of these religions, dominated the Tamil culture, along with the Vedic culture. Okay, Vedic culture also penetrated during the Sangam period. The Sangam period is 300 BC to 380. So, along with the Vedic culture, penetrated the Tamil land. Tamil land has its own culture called Sangam culture. That is fivefold land culture. That is Kurunji, Mullai, Maradam, Neidal, Palai. That is a traditional Tamil culture. Along with that, the Vedic culture penetrating. When Vedic culture penetrates, Avedic cultures like Buddhism, Jainism. So they didn't follow the tenets of the Vedas. They opposed Veda, Mahavira, and Buddha. That was very popular in the 5th century BC in the North India. That coming to the South India in the 1st century AD. So Tirukural is very much influenced by this Avedic cultures like Buddhism and Jainism. I would like to quote one Tirukural, one couplet, that according to many scholars, including the famous writer Jayakandan, that is influenced by the Dhammapada. Dhammapada, one verse in Dhammapada. Dhammapada is a Buddhist literature that describes how a monk should be, a Buddhist monk should be. So that verse says, what is the use of tansuring your head? Tansuring means, that is clear-cut shaving of the head. Tansuring, Tamil mutta podradhunu solluvom. So tansuring your head without clearing your mind. If you are a monk, you should be a monk, right? Your mind should be clear, then you can tansur. Tansuring is an external indication that his mind is also pure, without any contamination. So he is the real saint. So this is a verse present in Dhammapada, Buddhist teaching the moralities of the Buddhist monk. Valluvar is inspired by this verse in the Dhammapada, and he wants to extend this to Vedic culture also. So this is a morality for not only for a Buddhist monk. It is a general condition or general rule for any monk. So if you come to Vedic culture, a monk or sage will be having long beard and long hair. Okay. So any Munivar or any saint, any sage, they will be having long beard and long hairs. And he want to put this Dhammapada verse, and he modifies it. Malithalum neetalum venda ulagam palittadu olithu vidin. So you need not clean your head, need not tansure your head, not raise growth, not grow high level of hairs in your head to prove that you are a saint. Just keep away from the bad habits. Then you will be worshipped as a monk. You need not prove by your external signs. Neither the hair is not proving that. Whether you are keeping the hair or removing the hair, that is not the matter. Only your quality that matters. Keep. Malithalum neetalum venda ulagam palittadu olithu vidin. So this, even though it is inspired from the Buddhist verse, he suits it to the Vedic culture also. So that was the modification done by the Tiruvalluvar. So I would like to share another experience of myself and Madam when we recently brought out the Tirukural translation with the Penguin. That we had made a change in the blurb. So many times we communicated with the Penguin, And only as a single word, a single sentence we wanted to add. Because in Indian culture, you know, the Varnasrama Dharma is very popular. Okay. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaisyas, Sudras. In the fourfold Varna system, Sutras are kept in the lowest level. So, but Tirukkural is strictly against the Varna system. Tirukkural is the book that celebrates the Sutras to the highest level. So, farmers, agriculturists, is the, according to Tiruvalluvar, farmer or the plowman is the axle pin of the world. The whole world surrounds the axle pin of the farmer, or the farmer is the person who earns his own food. All others are worshipping and going behind them. It was the declaration of Tiruvalluvar. So farmer is the only person who earns his own food. All other people who are doing other kind of works, other kind of jobs, are going behind the farmers for their food. So this is celebrated how the agriculturist or a farmer is celebrated in a book called Tirukkural. This has to be focused in the blurb. But in original translation of the Tirukkural, it is a wonderful translation by Professor Sundara. But this word is not added in the blurb. So, Madam helped me a lot. We fought with Penguin. We negotiated many times, months together, to add this one line that how the Tirukkural celebrate the agriculturists or farmers. In the current context, it is very important. Farmers, we have to, because the modern generation has to realize the importance of the farmers. So, this is the local flavor, how it is added to the translation. Whenever, even the modern world also needs that, we have to insist the focus of the literature, where the focus coming. So, when compared to the Sanskrit literature, in the major part of Indian literature, and the southern literature, Tirukkural differs in that the viewing the how to a farmer has to be viewed. So that example I would like to quote. Then I come into the another book called Kambaramayanam. There is one of the great Tamil epic. So Kambar is celebrated as one of the great poet of India, equivalent to Kalidasa. So Kalidas is a poet in Sanskrit. Like that, Kambar is a celebrated poet in Tamil. Kambar wrote Kambaramayanam in the 12th century. So much after Valmiki. Nearly more than 10 to 12 centuries after Valmiki wrote Ramayana. So Valmiki Ramayana, the period was debated, but the present position, according to scholars, it was Romila Thapar and many historians put it during the Gupta period. During Gupta period, Ramayana and Mahabharata was attained to the present stage. Now, whatever the Ramayana, Mahabharata is told, the current text was written during the Gupta period, because during the Gupta period only, Rama was considered as the one of the avatar of Vishnu, Dasavatar. Rama was considered as the one of the Dasavatar during the Gupta period. But when Valmiki wrote Ramayana, Rama was considered as a king. Valmiki doesn't celebrate Rama as a avatar of Vishnu. So there is a main difference between the Valmiki Ramayana and Kambar Ramayana. Many of the scholars has written that. So what is the difference between Valmiki Ramayana and Kambar Ramayana? In that they argue Valmiki considered Rama only as a king, not as a avatar of a god. But when Kambar want to write Kambar Ramayana, because Kambar want to establish himself as a great poet, so he want to take a story which is much popular among the public. That's why he picks up Ramayana, because it is already popular among the people. So, because in the 6th, 7th, and 8th century, Tamil Nadu, but particularly southern India, was had the Bhakti movement. both the Alvars and Nayanmars. Alvars were the saints of Vaishnavism. Nayanmars were the saints of Saivism. They contributed much to the development of the Hindu religion. So, Kamba Ramayanam, written by Kambar in the 12th century, when Kambar want to take the Ramayanam as the story that has the scope to express himself as a great poet, but he had some limitations because of the hymns of Alvars, Rama's position was elevated to very high position than what it was portrayed by Valmiki. Valmiki portrayed Rama as a man of positive and negative things. He has a character with both positivity and negativity. But during the period of Kambar in the 12th century, Rama is worshipped as a god. So he cannot portray the Rama as such Valmiki portrayed him. And another thing, Valmiki portrayed Rama as per the North Indian tradition. But Kambar, when writing the Kambaramayam, he has to follow some certain Tamil tradition. For example, in Tamil tradition, Sangam tradition is very important. In Sangam tradition, ideal couple has to meet each other before their marriage, and they fall in love. Then only they can get married. That couple will be called as an ideal couple. So that is the concept of Sangam age. The Sangam age, if an ideal couple means they has to meet before their marriage. That life is called Kalavu. Kalavu means that is the marriage before the life. Before hero and heroine meets and fall in love with each other, then they enters the married life. That is Katpu Valkai. Divided into Kalavu Valkai and Katpu Valkai. And in between they had Karanam. Karanam means the rituals, marriage rituals. So first they love each other, then they do the rituals of marriage rituals, then they enter the Katpu Valkai. That is the Sangam tradition. Kalavu, Karanam, Katpu. That is the tradition portrayed in the Sangam age. But when Kambar adopted Ramayana, Valmiki Ramayana, the North Indian tradition was somewhat different. So Rama came and he breaks the vow and marries Sita. That is the Suyambara. So he modified. What is the scope for the modification to suit the Tamil condition, Tamil tradition? So he portrays a scene when Rama and Lakshmana, along with Vishwamitra, entering the palace, Sita was looking them from the balcony. And Rama also looked at Sita. Both of them see each other, sight at love. First sight, they got fall in love with each other. So he Kambar write it, Annalum Nokinal, Avalum Nokinal. He saw her, she saw him, and exchanged the heart with each other. At first sight at love. Then they went and he breaks the vow. Sita was waiting because so many princes might have come. Who would break the vow, he don't know. Kambar creates a character called Neela Mala. Story that friend of Sita. She comes and tells Sita that the prince whom you saw was the black man who you fall in love with first sight. He broke the vow. So at the one immediately Sita was happy. So this was introduced by the Kambar. It was not in the Valmiki Ramayana. So this was the change Valmiki Ramayana. Kambar introduced in Ramayana. This is the adding the local flavor or local tradition, local culture into the infusing the local culture, local tradition into the while adopting a foreign literature, a literature foreign to the land. So many things can be told in this. One, for example, Tamil grammar book called Tolkapiyam. Sanskrit sounds has to be so that it became a Tamil name. So even though Kambar wrote Kambaramayanam after 12 centuries or not 12 centuries, Tolkapiyam has been dated as 4th century text. So nearly after 16 centuries, Kambaramayanam was written after 16 centuries. Kambar has adopted the rules, whatever said by Tolkapiyam. Example, wherever Sanskrit sound have been, for example, Vibhishana was Ravana. Vibhishanan is the Sanskrit letter that shall not the original Tamil language. So he modifies the name as Udhiran. Instead of Vibhishana, he modified the name. Lakshmana, Sanskrit name. Kambar modifies the name as Ilakkuvan. Ilakkuvan means Lakshiyam. Ilakkuvan. Like Rama also, the first letter has to be start with a vowel in Tamil. So it should not start with Ra. So Iraman in Tamil he removes that modifies. The Sita he modifies according to the culture of Sita. So the has to be changed to suit the Tamil condition. So we can see in the things how a local word had to be added when we are from another culture. I would like to tell another word. And I was talking to one of my friend, Mr. Sandhya Nadarajan. He is a very good translator. He translated me text from Chekhov's short stories, and Chekhov's short stories, and like that. Many of he told that is KNIGHT 9. So we couldn't find a suitable Tamil word for that KNIGHT. Knighthood is a given to a person who do a merciful thing, a gallantry act out of mercy. Knighthood is a title offered to a person who do a gallantry act based on mercy. So what is suitable for that? So now the dictionary, ATR dictionary that has the word Karunai Maravan. Karunai Maravan means merciful warrior. Mercy warrior, the suitable word for knight in Tamil. Karunai Maravan. So that word is taken from Pilapalka. In Saram, one of incident. So the naming ceremony of Managali was on. So at that time, one old man coming to receive gift from Kovalan. Kovalan and Madhavi were distributing gifts to many people to celebrate the day of Managali. One old man was coming to receive the gift. At that time, elephant will be there. Elephants will be, they'll be having elephants to celebrate the function. So the one elephant come and takes that, attacks that old man. So out of mercy and Kovalan immediately rushed on to the elephant and he controls the elephant and saves the life of the old man.
That mercy, Ilangovadigal celebrates Kovalanasti, Kadakkalakkiya Karunai Mara is the merciful. He actually is not a warrior. Kovalan is a normal man. He's actually he belongs to a merchant family, a merchant. But how much he was become a warrior? What is the incident? The incident makes him as a warrior. Out of mercy, he did the gallantry act. So, the gallantry act was done by Kovalan. So, Ilangu celebrates that Katkal Adakya Maravan. Actually, Maravan is the word used to Kshatriya, not the Vaishyas. He was a Vaishya. Out of mercy, he became a Kshatriya. So, Kadakkalli Adakya Karunai Maravan. So, whenever the night, the English word night is used, in Tamil we can use the word Karunai Maravan. So, the reading of old literature of language also helps to find a suitable word for translation. So, this is the one of the points I would stress. Flavor to the when we translate foreign script. Umaram poems translated by Kavimani Deshikavana. He translated Umargayam poems. So in one of what living paradise, paradise on earth, he lists out certain things. Things are there that can be called a living paradise. What are the things? Shadow to live, and a gentle breeze, cup of wine, and a book. Paradise. So, according to Umargam, shadow, live, and a cup of wine, and a book of verse to read, and a girl to sing a song, living paradise. When Kavimani Deshikam Nayakam translated that, வெயிலுக்கேற்ற நிழல் உண்டு, வீசும் தென்றல் காற்றுண்டு, நிறைய உண்டு, கலந்த நீ உண்டு, கலசம் நிறைய மது உண்டு, கையில் கம்பல் கவி உண்டு, கலந்து உண்டு, மையம் தரும் வளமின்றி வாழும் சொர்க்கம் வேறுண்டோ அப்படின்னு டிரான்ஸ்லேட் பண்றார். புக் ஆஃப் வேர்ஸ் அப்படின்னா our Umargayam song comes mentions that a book of verse, but Kavimani changes that Kayil Kamban Kavi undu. We have a book written by Kamban in our hand. So that is to adapt the Umargayam song to the Tamil culture. The technique adopted by the Kavimani. So another experience I would like to share. Recently we translated Karisal Kaigal, Stories from Black Soil of K. Rajanarayanan through HarperCollins. Mini Madam coordinated that. So we selected the stories. It was published in 1980s. Many of it has nearly 20 stories written by different writers. Now many of them got to Sahitya Academy Award, 4 or 5 of them. And different stories were there. So what would be the title of the book? We discussed a lot. First we focused that stories from the Black Soil. Will it be a proper title for the book? So, but HarperCollins people, they didn't agree that. So, stories from Black Soil means it is too much regional. So whenever a book is kept in the airport, if anybody want to see the book at the first sight, it has to attract. You should have an attractive title. So the title should be a universal title. So they suggested one of the story. Title of the one of the story in the book was "Along with the Sun." But our government side we are afraid because "Along with the Sun" is the title. Okay, it is the HarperCollins proposed the title, but incidentally, rising sun was the symbol of the opposition party, then opposition party, now ruling party. So the proposal was came during the previous regime. So we were little bit afraid how to keep the title. But HarperCollins was very much decided that that should be the title along with the sun. That is the universal title. Sun is the universal thing. But we won reservations in having the title, and then we convinced the advisory committee and our authorities, and Mini Medium also explained why we want that title. Then we published that book along with the sun in the previous regime itself. Even though the rising sun was the symbol of the present regime, at that time it was the opposition party. So when the government of Tamil Nadu decided to publish the book, the title was Along with the Sun. So we have to consider even that political reasons also sometimes. And another thing is adding a glossary that we are adapting. So whenever a translation is done, people will not understand the local dialectical words. For example, grandmother is a common word in English, but in Tamil Nadu, different word is used. In some region, they'll called Achi. Some region, they'll called Party. In some region, they'll be calling Mama. In some region, they'll called Appata. So based on whether the mother of father or mother of mother, they'll be having different names. So whenever names are used, we need to do glossary or footnote. That is very much needed in a translation. That local flavor, that words has to be introduced because once Abdul Kalam has mentioned in one of his book, Guswant Singh told once Abdul Kalam, I know only two words in Tamil. One is Vanakam. The other word is Ayo. Okay, because alas, oh my God, the Ayo word is commonly used by many people whenever they share some unwanted news. So, whenever we are using a local word we are using the local word in the literature, there is every chance that it will enter English dictionary. Many words has already entered. You know about the words. If you just click the Wikipedia, you can find out catamaran and anaconda. Anaconda also a Tamil word, elephant killer. It was the anaconda, how it became from the Sri Lankan python. How there is a history, how it entered the English dictionary. When a last python was identified in South America, the word used in Sri Lanka, Tamil word, anaconda, elephant killer, the python, a largest python which can kill the elephant. That is called anaconda. The anaconda, the root word is anaconda, elephant killer. So when South America, when largest python was identified, they used the word anaconda. So that may be the Tamil origin word. So like that, there are different words enter the dictionary from local. So when we use that word, then only we are doing the justice to the language from which we are translating. So that we has to do. Any translator has to do has to add a glossary. So has to introduce all the relative or relationship names or the names of the food items, names of the ornaments, local ornaments. For example, old ladies in Tamil Nadu used to wear a ornament. It is pampadam. So many people don't know what is pampadam. So that pampadam has to be explained. That is a ornament usually worn by the old ladies in their ear, like that. So we in our Tamil Nadu Textbook Corporation book, thanks to Mini Krishnan Madam, we have introduced a glossary in all the books possible. What are the important words we have taken and introduce the glossary, because it is an academic contribution. To have, not only a literature is a part of study. So we have to we have to introduce the local words into English. These are enriching because English adopts the words from all languages. So we can do ourselves some words. Sometimes a footnote or glossary is not possible, or sometimes it needs a very detailed description of certain words. I would like to mention about when I was conversing with a writer from Tirunelveli. He was a great scholar in Tamil language and has got many awards, and is a great appreciator of Pudhapithan. And Pudhapithan stories having more of Tirunelveli related things in this. Tirunelveli, they'll be having a food item. The second day of marriage, in particular communities, they will be in that they will be calling it as Sodi Sapadu. Sodi Sapadu means SOTHI. Sodi. Sodi is a curry. Actually, it is prepared with the coconut milk. If you simply referred it as it is a curry prepared with the coconut milk, that not be interesting to read. How that Sodi is prepared has to be explained, so that they can really know the flavor of the Sodi. So it is a very tedious procedure. Generally, ladies will be afraid to cook it often. So only we can taste it only in the marriage houses, because the coconut milk has to be extracted thrice. First, they have to break the coconut, and grated coconut has to be grinded, and from that coconut milk has to be extracted. First, they have to extract the first coconut milk. Then again, they have to, by adding some water, again they have to grind it. The first milk has to be kept aside. And the second milk has to be taken, and again third time also they have to grind it, and the third milk has to be taken, and second and third milk has to be used for cooking vegetables and moong dal. In that, garlic is added, and after some time, ginger and green chilies has to be grinded, and that has to be added. Just before switch off the stove, we have to add the fresh coconut milk taken first. Then we have to squeeze off lemon. That will be the actual preparation of Sodi. It is a menu. If a person from Tirunelveli want to explain this thing, actually Nanjal Nadan, a famous Tamil writer, Sahitya Academy Award winner, known for writing food items in his description of food items in his novels, short stories. So maybe many other writers also maybe like that, Malayalam, Telugu, I don't know their names. So like that, Sodi has to be explained. the whole preparation has to be explained. Then only the reader of the novel will be impressed by that preparation, because literature teaches everything. Okay, not only the morals or habits, how to live. Life is taught through literature. So even menu can be taught through the literature. So for that, a translation will help. So along with this, Sodhi, I would like to conclude how to add literary flavor to the translation. Now it is open for discussion.
It was so interesting to listen to this. My mind is not a question, just to contribute. One Mr. Jagannathan wrote a very good introduction to slightly abridged translation of Kambaramana some 20 years ago. And he said, he took a single incident and said how culturally what is acceptable. I mean, that also in the creation or the revision, or what shall I say, adaptation through the centuries. A single incident in the Ramayana, that is when Ravana comes and takes Sita away. In Valmiki, I think he holds her by the shoulder and pulls her onto the Pushpa Vimana.
Yeah. Yes, madam. He
And
holds Sita and keeps in her takes away. But in Kambaramana, he takes Sita along with the Barnasala, along with the head.
He pulls the hair. He pulls the hair, yeah. But in in Tulsidas, which comes much later, he scoops up the earth underneath.
Yeah.
He scoops the earth on which Sita, he won't touch any part of her.
Yes.
So
Okay.
I remember this thing he wrote in the introduction, how the same work has, how it alters to suit the cultural, what is acceptable to the culture of that time. Then one more thing, Paula Richmond said, this Avatar, you talked about Avatar. Rama, according to the Avatar thing, Rama comes first, then Krishna. But Paula Richmond said that if you look at the Mahabharata culture of more than one wife, Arjuna has so many wives, then the relationship between Bhima and Hidimbi, all these, and the tribals also being accepted to Kshatriya princes. This culture is actually older than what we see in Ramayana, which is Ekapatni, and that distinct difference between the forest people and the people in the city. This is a point of discussion in Paula Richmond's analysis of Ramayana and Mahabharata. That also she
Very nice.
She links it to the culture and with the history. But this is not a question, these are just remarks to contribute to the understanding. I really would love to hear what students or the teachers of literature have to say about your remarks.
I just have a small doubt. Like when we translate, won't it be very difficult? I mean, a bit difficult to get the right word for the right meaning, because each language has its own cultural differences and language differences. So won't it be difficult to get the right word when we translate?
No, definitely. Very difficult to get the right word. That's why a translator is needed and the editor is needed. The translator translates, and if you translate anything very effectively, then there is no role for mini madam. So we need mini madam like editors to edit it whatever we translate, because editing is a much harder job than the translation. Translation is a quick job that we can translate number of pages. We can translate 10, 20 or 30 pages per day. But editing is a much difficult job. Which word suits where?
right? So when you become an editor, by becoming by working as a translator for a long time, then you can become an editor. So by madam, am I right?
Because a translator is so much far superior to editor. Translator has to be actually bicultural. Sanjana, that's why it's not enough to just know 2 languages. You have to also be comfortable with the culture into which you're translating. And actually, one thing I'd like to say here, everything need not be done by one person in translation. You can have 2 or 3 people working on the same translation. You can exchange views. You can compare the same page as each of you translates. It's very nice to work, very comfortable and a very empowering to work with a second translator.
Will always find a solution when we discuss it with related people having
Correct.
related mind, then we will find the solution.
And whatever you translate, it doesn't matter if you make mistakes. People think that, you have to get it right every time. No. And at the heart of all translation, there will be some failure because you won't get the exact equivalent. That's not possible, particularly if you're translating to English. But if you're translating in the Sanskritized languages, say between Kannada and Malayalam or Malayalam and Telugu or the other, these 3 languages, you can move quite smoothly because there is a commonality. But when you translate into Tamil, these languages, there is a lot of difficulty because I think, Doctor, you should talk about that.
Yeah, madam, that's it rightly. Usually it is that woman can see the beautiful woman only before the mirror. The woman appreciate beauty of only herself only. Like that, translator also, the one translator will translate only his translation alone will be the good. He will criticize all others' translation. We and many men are seeing so many translators, and they will see find fault with any translator. Okay, so translation always it is not a 100% perfection is an illusion. Okay, so you will never achieve 100% perfection. If you are 90%, 95% perfection, you have to satisfy yourself.
Sanjana, that's why, see, just now Doctor talked about the glossary and the footnotes. Some of the things which you simply can't carry on, like you say Shaligrama, there's no equivalent for Shaligrama in English. So you can give that explanation. Then all this muddy and some of our rituals and all that, there's absolutely no equivalent because in English, these things simply don't exist. Our caste system, that also is totally alien to that language. So either you must have a good introduction, a good academic apparatus which explains these things. You can have a small list of kinship names because our relationships and family relationships are extremely difficult for those who are not born into this culture for them to understand. Or you can have the glossary and the footnotes for the more complex things. And as for translation, when you translate, you can do 2 or 3 drafts. You can share it with friends. You can read it out loud. Especially conversation, you must read it out loud. Only then you will get that tone right. Have you translated anything, Sanjana?
No, ma'am, I haven't done anything,
Then
but I wish I could.
Why wish? If you know 2 languages, you must start. Start with poetry, then do small short stories, something like that. Even popular film songs, you can, the old songs which are older film songs which are very poetic and very lyrical. It'll be interesting for you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
How does one deal with your own personal conflicts with the text while trying to translate it, sir? If you have problems with the text, what do you do when you translate? Again, putting it in the context in which Dr. Saravanan would speak these things, like for instance, he said Thiruvalluvar was a critic of the Vedic rituals and things like that, or even he has criticized about the Jainism principles of tonsuring. It's not tonsuring your head or growing long hairs, but it is your heart that should be with qualities, filled with qualities that is needed. So if you're like for instance, if I'm a Jain, or believer. Like, and I have, some, I see a meaning in tonsuring head, like, so what do I do? Do I translate, those portions, and how do I deal with those things without, getting into personal, this thing with those things. So
Yeah, one thing about if you take up a translation, your chief role and duty is to carry through the voice of the author.
yeah,
So
But you, as a translator, you also have certain rights. So you can, in your introduction, say, although this is what the author said, and I've translated it as faithfully as possible, this is what I feel. This is my comment. Like recently, not so recent, 4 years ago, Dr. Ambedkar's that speech, which he was never allowed to deliver, the annihilation of caste, was brought out by Narayana. And Arundhati Roy was asked to write an introduction. Her introduction is longer than Dr. Ambedkar's text. She had said many things pertaining to the text and saying, this is what Gandhi would have said. I mean, not this was Gandhi's position. This was so and so's position. Not that text needed any translation. It was English only, but interpretation is also the role of the translator. I remember Mahashweta Devi's story. Stanadayani was translated by Gayatri Spivak as the breast giver. She was talking about it on the stage. She asked the person sitting next to her, "Is that my story?" So many versions there can be of the same thing.
If it is an adoption, then the translator has some liberty.
yes, sir.
If it is a pure translation, he has to reflect the views of the original author. He has to consult the author and he has to carry just a translator. That's all. He is not playing, he cannot play more role. If it's an adoption, he is also a part of a creator, so he can take the liberty.
The question is, often as a translator, we are caught up between finding a middle ground between localizing the source text too much and not localizing it enough. How should we know where to draw the line? This is from Muskan, right? Since localizing enough might make the reader too distant for a foreign reader, or to understand, and not localizing it enough looks like injustice to the source text. So what to do? How much can you make Kamba Ramayana and keep Valmiki Ramayana as Ramayana in your language? Take Valmiki Ramayana and can it become Kamba Ramayana, or should it still be Valmiki Ramayana itself? Where is the middle ground? Dr. Aditya.
But Muskan, I have a possible answer to your question. If you are translating for an organization, if you are translating for an agency, you need to have an agreement with them. And there I think they will not allow you to do translation freely. They have their own terms and conditions, clauses. They will have a hook on you. So that will determine actually the form and structure of your translation. Okay, if you are translating under an agency, if it is a commissioned translation, I think this also can relate to the question with the personal conflict. How does one deal with your own personal conflict? Actually, these are highly sensitive issues.
Yes.
It is actually political, as Madam says. It is actually, and people have translated. And when you go against the author, against the source text, or you manipulate something, where the source author may not agree with you, may not accept it, and people will start criticizing you. Your translation will be rejected. Even they may go to court also. These things are highly sensitive, actually.
Yes. Some translators leave out things.
Yes.
They can even drop a whole chapter. These things have happened.
Yes.
Yeah, in Dr. A.J. Thomas thing, he mentioned how Tagari himself agreed to remove many of the portions which were very typical of the coastal Malabar culture and things like that. Tagari himself agreed with Narayan Guru, and things like that. So there is a lot of combination that happens here, give and take, and then probably, like if you have the freedom. One is I have often noticed the writing style and richness of vocabulary change from one translated text to another. How does one keep text authentic and similar to the writer's style when translating? This is from Sanchita. She's probably a third-year student from WCC. Good to hear all the students coming up.
Authenticity, the thing is, you have 3 or 4 translations of the same text. It will simply not be the same because the vocabulary bank, the choice of words, what you decide to emphasize, all these things will change. We're talking about a literary text, not a non-literary work where imagination is not required, but skill with finding equivalence. I think the use of resource people who may not know the target language very well, but who will be able to spot what has been left out. You should use resource persons to check the original and the translation. How it is, whether there is a slant. In fact, some translators are so scrupulous, they get to know the text better than the author. Because once I was at a meeting between a German author and his translator, and the German writer said, "I'm afraid of my translator because she'll come back and say, this thing in your novel should not have happened on a Saturday. It should have happened on a Sunday because this happened on a Friday." So, translators are so dedicated. They become so obsessed with the text. They actually enter the text, enter that world, enter the author's mind so powerfully. That's how you have to be as a good translator. And if the author is alive, the author can always sit with his own resource person who knows that target language, whether it is Tamil or German or English, and validate the text. This is the reason many people don't understand why a translation takes such a long time to bring to perfection. There should be a resource person involved. If the author is alive, author should be consulted, should be brought into that, because sometimes author feels very insecure. Are they doing it correctly? I'm sure they do make a mess of my work. They have all these fears. And then the publisher's editor, all of them have a role to play. If each plays his role properly, the final text can approach some sort of quality.
How do we determine the reliability of a translated work?
Yeah, you need a resource person. If the author is alive, you see, if the author is not with us anymore, your responsibility as a translator and or responsibility as a publisher increases that much more. Because you have to you have to act on behalf of the author. Or if the author has a trust, or the author has a family that has taken interest. Many authors, the families are not at all interested. They're very indifferent. Or some scholar or some admirer of the author can be consulted. Just somebody who knows the language well and is sensitive to it. Authenticity can easily be checked by somebody who knows the source language very well. Just get good reviewers. That's my one suggestion.
That's true as a translator or as the author, looking at the translation. But what about the readers? How do they think that, okay, this is a translated text which I can...
Yeah, the reader can also do that, can get hold of the original. If you're that keen, get hold of the original and ask somebody who knows the original language, the source language, to read it. And say, is it like this? Does it work well? How does it sound? Is the tone right?
Yeah, true.
The problem in translation is it's not only what is written or what is said. There are so many things that are not said.
Yes.
Those are unsaid. That Vivek Shanbach said that once. The unsaid things are also very, very important. How to carry that through. How are puns and other literary devices translated? You can't always, because puns and proverbs and all that are very much part of a culture. Like, I always quote this one, ghee in a frog's belly. That is like pearls, casting pearls before swine. It's something like that. When you're translating, put this into English, people who are not part of the Indian culture will wonder what is so great about ghee. Whereas everyone in India knows that ghee is a very dear thing. It's very precious. It's used sparingly. So these sort of things be very difficult. Or
Yes.
in Malayalam we say, oh, I think it's in Tamil, maybe all Indian languages. The grass that sprouted just yesterday. That is to refer to a person's extreme youth and inexperience. Innala modacha pullu. So this, when you translate it literally into, let's say, English, it won't make sense. You have to try and find the equivalent over there. See, in English, there is a saying, no? When somebody bluffs you, something which is obviously a lie, you say, go tell it to the Marines. Because the Marines are supposed to be very dull people who will believe anything they're told. But that, if you try to translate here, it won't make any sense at all. All these nautical words about phrases to do with the ship, these are all very common in the English language, in English literature and English usage. But you bring it to a country to a region which is landlocked, where the people have no experience of the sea, seafaring, or boats, or ships, or sailing. It won't make any sense at all. Bible translation is an example. The phrase about the thing about Jesus, Lamb of God, little Lamb of God. When they were translating for the Inuits in Greenland, where it is not a pastoral culture, they translate and made it the little seal of God, because there's no such thing as lamb or sheep or goat or anything over there. But they know about the seal. It's very much part of their culture, their food. And so I said, Jesus is introduced as the little seal of God. That they understood. So these are the challenges, and these are the way translators can overcome problems. Thank you.